much for coming this evening to hear a political candidate talk. This is my third or fourth town hall in Clickatack County. I've held 33 in front of about 2,500 people in the 9 months since I launched this campaign, and we're going to put a couple more dozen on the schedule because this is a great opportunity to meet with constituents and for you to hear my story and for me to hear yours. So I want to just do a quick bio, tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm running for office, and then why I find town hall so incredibly important. And then I just unleash you all to ask me questions or to offer your comments about the campaign. So my name is Carolyn, and I'm running to beat Jamie Herrera Butler. I have been a professor at Washington State University for the last 23 years. Go Cougs! That's also supposed to be a applause line. But just because you teach political science doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to run a campaign, but I think we're doing pretty good, and I'll give you a campaign update. I'm most proud of some of the work that I did at WSU with my Initiative for Public Deliberation. I trained students to be neutral facilitators, and then we go into communities and we hold conversations about policy issues. And what we do is we put people in a small circle and we diversify who's at that circle, and our students find a way to have conversations which focus on shared values and beliefs rather than on purely policy positions. Because what I found in this campaign and what I've known forever is that we share so much in common with one another, and we have to focus on that and the things that divide us. And the reason why that's important is we are in such a highly politicized environment where polarization of our institutions is breaking our government institutions, including Congress, and our electorate has become very polarized as well. So teaching people to have conversations is actually a little way in which we contribute to democracy at a local level. But I also come from humble roots in rural communities. I grew up in both Rogue River, Oregon, and Brookings, Oregon. Rogue River was a town of 900, and we lived 11 miles out in the woods. So I know a little bit of what it's like to live in a rural community, but also to struggle. Our family was on public assistance for a while. Both of my parents worked. There were 5 kids, and it was tough. And it's tough to get by sometimes in a rural community. We moved to Brookings, Oregon when I was 12 to open up a produce stand, John's Fresh Produce. I worked there from 12 to 17, helping out the family. Also important to me because it's tough to run a small business in America. And it also is very rewarding because when you own a small business, you're interacting with members of the community constantly. And that's so important, getting to know your friends and neighbors and also hearing their struggles and their successes. So I really, it was a formative period in my life because I learned the importance of community, and it's one of the things that motivates me to do what I'm doing today. Went to graduate school in New Jersey. Has anybody been in New Jersey ever in the summer? I came home every summer because I didn't want to be in New Jersey in the summer, but I went back working in the produce stand, and at that point we also had a small farm. So I think my background suits me well for the 3rd Congressional District with its urban-rural mix, and I'm very happy to be here to share that story with you today. There are 2 things that have motivated me to run for office. This is my first run. The first is my research on political polarization and incivility has sort of been a driving force in my professional life. I talked about the Initiative for Public Deliberation, but I also think that we have to change our institutions from within. You have to elect people to Congress who are problem solvers, who are natural collaborators, and who are willing to work across the aisle and even within your own party sometimes to get things done. And we don't see that too much in Congress. We see a lot of party line votes. We see leadership holding things up in committees and not bills that don't see the light of day. And it's incredibly broken. I mean, you see that with not only what they've produced in terms of legislation, but what they're not allowing to move forward. So I think we need to fix this polarization by hiring the right people. And that's what you're doing. You're hiring people for Congress. Another motivating factor was the 2016 presidential election. Because I saw how this uncivil discourse can sort of poison our democracy, and having it come from the top, and having a Congress unwilling to check the president very much alarms me. I'm a constitutional law scholar, and I know about checks and balances and separation of powers, and I don't think we have it today. So that also motivated me. But the real motivating factor was wanting to give back in some small way. And for me, it was running for office. And for so many people in this community, it's volunteering for the campaign. We've got some great volunteers in White Salmon. It's supporting other candidates. And for those of you who are already supporters, thank you as always. Kirsten, a big shout out to you. Who's really done well for us. That's why we run for office. People like Kirsten who gets up, as a volunteer working on this campaign. It energizes, and if she doesn't recruit you by the time you leave, she's not doing her unpaid job well. Let's hope for her to account for that. But it really is that I want to serve the people. This is really public service, and it's why I'm here today. I mentioned how many town halls I've held. These are live, in-person town halls. Not on the phone. I'm not doing a coffee with somebody calling it a town hall. They are town halls. And the reason why they're so important is you get to hear from me, I get to hear from you, and you should know that we are not always going to agree. In fact, there's only one person who I agree with 100% of the time. And I got to vote for her in August, and I'm going to vote for her in November, and it's Carolyn. So I know that we're not always going to agree, but you have my vow that when elected, I will come back and hold town halls. Because when we disagree, yeah, you're welcome. And you should expect that of every election. But also, when we disagree, I want to look you in the eye, and I want to tell you why I voted the way I did. I want you to challenge me and persuade me that I'm wrong. Because that's what we have to do. We have to really listen to the voices of people who don't feel like they're being heard, and this is a great mechanism for doing so. So I'll continue to do it. As I said, I'm going to have a couple more dozen. We hope before the general election, and I will be here all the time because that's what representation is all about. Just campaign update. We're really doing well. We're really doing well. We knew we were. We did a poll. So science matters. But two things of note in the election. One is that I was within, I think, 5 or 6 points of Jamie Herrera Butler, where she has won primaries by 20 to 23 votes. So that's closing the gap very quickly. But the total Democratic vote and the total Republican vote there's only a 2-point difference between the two. So if we're able to consolidate those votes, we got, really well. And also Michael Courtney, who's a Republican who ran, has endorsed me. So we're getting people from the other side of the aisle. And I think that's really good for how things are going to look in the general election. Endorsements from the Washington delegation, of course, some national leaders, but also the DCCC. So they have identified this as one of those top nationally competitive races. And so that attention is going to help us. It's also going to lead to probably a lot of negative ads, negative money, and corporate money from the other side. But we're just going to do what we're doing, which is running a civil, respectful campaign, meeting as many voters as possible, keeping our head above water, and then just doing what we're doing because it appears to be working. So very proud of that, and very proud of this, actually. This is amazing. Third time I've been at the library, and we fill it every time, and that shows that there's great energy for this campaign. So with that, I'm going to hand it over for your questions, and we've got a good 75 minutes together. Michael. Oh, and so I met all of you, I think. I won't remember all of your names. So if you can introduce yourself, if I have.
Michael Butler, White Salmon.
And and where you're from. Yeah. And what are you?
I'm the vice chair for the Democrat. So my question, well, let's start. I voted for Dorothy, particularly as I told you earlier, and I'm getting 100% behind your campaign because I think you're a great candidate. But I voted for Dorothy because her primary message was fighting legalized corruption that exists in not just campaign finance, but once you get there, lobbyists, so on and so forth. So I noticed also in my doing as vice chairs, I go around the county a lot, and I enjoy actually talking to the other people on their side more. It's just my personality. I like trying to persuade people in debates. But anyhow, one of the common threads I've noticed on both sides, I hate using that term, but is they realize that our system we've been sold out basically to corporate interests. And that's basically why I voted for Dorothy. So my question to you is, I'd like 3 specific ideas you have to address that. Obviously, there's a lot more than 3, but I'd like to get a sense of where you want to go. And to give you an idea of what I'm looking for, here's three of my
Well, you
proposals.
can't tell me before I.
Well, you can either say those are all three ideas, I love it, or pick up your own three.
Okay.
So the first one is limits on individual contributions, $4,700 or whatever it is.
27.
Oh, it's 47. Well, whatever. That's still way too much. No one can afford to give that much to a campaign. Well, not very few people can afford to. Very few people can afford to give that much.
Yeah.
So my proposal is, I'd say $250 to $500. That might be low, but and match it to median income, a percentage of median income, maybe 5% of median income, because that's what I think a small person could afford for the nation. Another one is Elizabeth Warren beat me to it. Is when you get in office, any investments, not you, but when a congressperson gets in office or senator gets in office, any investments that they have go into a government-run trust.
Yeah.
And it's actually great. I like her bill on Elizabeth Warren.
Why not Carolyn? She should do that too.
And then the third one is, and this one I'm kind of up and tossing my head around is, but no individual contributions outside of the district. Unless the candidate the burden of proof is on the candidate, unless the candidate can prove that there's some sort of connection to the district, even though they don't live in the district.
Okay, so I like one of them. Yeah. I think the idea of having investments in a sort of a blind trust is an interesting one. I want to think a little bit about that, but I'm intrigued by it. On the issue of individual contributions, I think that 2,700 is not nearly as high as you think it is for some donors. And the way I look at financial contributions is you need them for a campaign. If you can get as many supporters as possible, that's great. My average donation is, I think, $83 right now.
But the goal is to get a lot of money. How not to make it be.
The reality is, it's you gotta run. You gotta, if it all happens at once, I mean, you think. Like we have a comprehensive bill that deals with everything, then I'm on board. But if not,
yes,
I think that out of district money is an interesting one because one of the things that we see nationally is that people start to give from outside of the district because they want to support a campaign, especially if you're going to flip a House seat, which is something that's happening with these 60 competitive races. But to sort of prohibit somebody from doing so, I'm not comfortable with that. Let me tell you what I will do. I will learn more about Warren's bill because I'm intrigued by that. I think there's a lot of constitutional law on the individual contribution end, which would preclude that from being something we can do. I believe we overturn Citizens United. You know that I've said that repeatedly. It's very difficult to do. It's a constitutional amendment. It's only happened 4 times to reverse a decision. We increase transparency. I think the biggest challenge, as far as I'm concerned, is that people don't know where the money is coming from. The FEC is burdensome to get through. Open secrets is a little bit better. We even encountered issues where the way our money was collected was it showed up a certain way on the FEC report and led to people making assumptions that weren't accurate. So yeah, let's navigate that better. But let's increase transparency in terms of who's buying ads and who is broadcasting them, because people use clever names like Americans for Prosperity, and it sounds fabulous, but it's the Koch brothers. So I think that will have people pay attention a little bit more. I think that the rule on lobbyists should be longer, so that if you're out of office, so you can't become a lobbyist in 2 years. I think we can make that a little bit longer. So there are all sorts of those minor measures that I think will have an impact, but it's tough. The fact that I spend a lot of time raising money is a challenge. The fact that I'm not taking corporate money is a challenge. It makes my job much more difficult. But I truly believe we have to get corporate money out of politics. This is where Dorothy and I agreed. So those are some of my initial thoughts.
Elizabeth Warren bill is.
Yeah, I'll look at it. She's doing something else that I like too that I got to look into. And welcome aboard, Michael. Yeah. And I'm sorry, and your name again?
I'm Fred.
Fred.
Any chance that you and your opponent will have some kind of I guess you call it debate?
I sure hope so. So I just issued a press release this afternoon challenging her to debate in every county, and not a candidate forum. It's not that I don't have a problem with forums, but candidate forums often don't have an opportunity to have an interchange between the candidates. That's what I want. That's what the real debate is, and that's what we should demand as people from people running for federal office. So we'll see how she responds.
That would be good.
I'd be looking forward to it more than you guys. Kelly.
I noticed you don't have a donation basket, so it's obvious that you're just rolling in dough.
Envelopes right here. Oh, no. I got you covered, Kelly. We're not rolling in dough, but we're doing a good job raising money for this campaign, which is unfortunately, as Michael suggested, is necessary. But we have to be able to get our message out because a lot of people don't even pay attention to the last couple of weeks, and that means TV and it's expensive and it's unfortunate. But we can always use more donations, so they'll take care of you.
Okay.
We make it easy to take your money. Yes.
Could you?
And you have to tell me who you are. And
Baxter, White Salmon, and I'm on the board that put that.
there you go. I just had to do that for Mike.
I was going to say something.
Well, look at the Democrats are alive and well. Anyway,
Well done.
so could you lay out, at least in a brief outline, what your idea of comprehensive immigration reform would look like?
Yeah. So I'm going to backstep a little bit and then I'll get to the question. What I would like us very much to do is to pass single item legislation on things that has wide bipartisan support. So a Clean Dream Act is something we should all want because there's 2/3 of Americans and 2/3 of members of Congress want a Clean Dream Act. The problem now is that some of these issues are being held hostage because of what Trump wants, which is a border wall. So I would want a single issue with that, a single issue dealing with the political refugee crisis, which is separate from illegal immigration or undocumented workers. That is a human rights issue that has to be dealt with as immediately, and we have to work on family reunification. It's not just stopping the separation, it's getting the families together. So for those types of issues where there's so much support, we should not allow partisan leaders in Congress to sort of hold them hostage in hopes of getting something more comprehensive. So on to comprehensive reform, I mean, we have to deal with border security. It shouldn't be a wall because it doesn't solve the problem because half of the people who are undocumented fly in and they overstay their visas. But you have to have some level of security. People want that, but we have to be a little bit more creative about virtual security and things like that. I think we need a path to citizenship for people. And that's something that folks have talked about. We had a conversation right before about how in 2013, the Gang of Eight in the Senate had a very comprehensive immigration package that dealt with security, that dealt with H-1B visas for students, that dealt with paths to citizenship. I think that's a good model.
It was over
to start
13
with.
years.
Yeah. It was phased in slowly. So I think that we can do that. But my concern is that we keep on kicking the can down the road and that we are leveraging these very hotly passionate political issues for his wall. So that's sort of where I would start. It started the 2013 bill, but I think we need clean Dream Acts dealing with the political refugee crisis.
Does that include employment visas? We're in a kind of an agriculture
Yes.
area here, and there are a lot of people undocumented, and they're kind of at the beck and call of the employers.
Right.
And can you see any?
So I think that the bill in 2013 had a verification thing for employers. I'd have to look into it. Yeah, I think that had something.
It was mandatory.
Yeah, and but there's also, I'd like to have more guest passes.
The fellow that murdered the woman.
Oh, it was
That he was working for the big Republican group, and he said, "Oh yes, we saw the documentation. They gave it to us.
It wasn't E-Verify.
Wasn't verified.
Yeah, it wasn't.
And that's what happens around here too.
Oh, you're talking about the man who killed the young woman.
Right.
Yeah.
The Republicans. I mean, that's just an example.
Right. I always, it saddens me that becomes politicized though, that the fact that the man was undocumented, because when a man kills his wife and 2 children and is an American citizen, do we talk about that? I don't think we do. So I regret that we politicize things like that. I don't think it's very helpful to the debate. In fact, it's poisonous to the debate, in my opinion.
What are you doing to reach out to Hispanic community?
So we were endorsed by, where's the years? It's by Brain Trust. We were endorsed by Our Revolution Votes.
One America.
One America Votes, sorry. One America Votes, too many things to remember. So that was part of our outreach, just in terms of getting into that community, talking about voter registration. We go to the meetings in Vancouver most frequently, either me or one of the members of our team. The name escapes me. Thank you, LULAG. So we've done that to sort of outreach. there's just so much to remember into that community. But voter registration is actually a key part of our outreach because many people are not registered to vote, and we have to get on that first before we even look at getting them into support the campaign. We're translating some of our material into Spanish so that we're accessible in that way as well. So those are some of the things. Do you have suggestions?
No, I just haven't, I look at this crowd and I've read a lot of your literature and seen a lot of your material, but I really haven't, and I don't see a Hispanic representation.
Yeah. That's good criticism. Yeah. And it's a small but very, it's a small community in many parts of the third congressional district, and some of them are really struggling. Obviously, immigration is an issue that touches them, and so, we'll work on that. Yeah.
Greg from White Salmon. I've had an opportunity to do a lot of volunteering. One thing that I hear from both parties is concern about Social Security and Medicare. What will you do to make it small and fair?
The first thing I would do is not cut. I will not cut either. I was in the voter's guide. That's non-negotiable. These are earned benefit programs that we all pay into. So I don't think we tinker with the retirement age, which I have heard from Republican circles. And I'm very concerned about potential cuts. So I'm going to go there first, and I'll come back to solvency. For the longest time, I was confused about the Republican tax bill. It just seemed like a terrible bill that disproportionately helped people who didn't need assistance and helped corporations that are doing fine in this economy, whereas working families are not. And it also added $2 trillion to the federal debt. And then I realized, suddenly these Republicans are going to become fiscally conservative again, and they're going to be looking at our programs for cuts. And so I'm very fearful about cuts to Social Security and Medicare. And it's been floated in the past. There's no reason to think that it's not going to be floated in the future. On the solvency issue, I think we have to look at the cap on where we can collect the payroll taxes, because that's the way in which we can get more money into the system. And it's not like I want to soak the rich, but it certainly is one that we increase from time to time, and is not sort of connected to something. So it should be connected to something, which means it always happens rather than having a renewed debate.
Can you elaborate on, in case there are some individuals who don't understand what's being by raising the cap?
People pay into Social Security only to, I think it's $136,000. So it might be a little bit higher.
Real close. 128,000.
128. Okay. And so anything beyond that, you don't have